It is championship weekend, Suneil. I think we just came out of the best week in the playoffs. Bang for my buck is divisional weekend. But if it's championship weekend and your team's still around, all of a sudden this becomes the best weekend in football. So we're going to talk about the Eagles matchup, what looks good for the 49ers, what doesn't look so good. We're going to put a bow on the Dallas game and just talk through every situation at hand, try to break this game down and figure out if your San Francisco 49ers are going to be Super Bowl bound this Sunday. We'll talk about it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. It's Tuesday, which means I got my guy, So Real, Suneil, rocking the best linebackers jersey in the NFL. What's up, Suneil?
All pro Fred, man. Like, what a game from him. I'm excited. We are in another NFC championship game, I think, with the best team that we've had during this tenure. So it's exciting time. But Jesse, before we jump in, can I, Mr. Gray, one of the comments was talking about he's going to the game and he wanted to, he said he hopes that the Eagles fans don't beat him up because he's heard things. I've lived in Philadelphia before. I've been to Philadelphia Eagles games. Let me tell you, these guys are wild boys. I went to a game where they won. They won the game, and there was fights between Eagles fans outside after a win. That's how heated it is. So please go out there, wear your 49ers jerseys, but be safe because these are wild boys. They are not the type that are just going to shake your hand. You will be jawed at. Liquor is going to be flowing, so stay safe. But you got to rep the 49ers out there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in all these scenarios, especially with an NFC championship, I mean, regardless of where you're going to go, it could get brutal. Definitely keep your head on a swivel. I always say, in these situations, I like to travel with friends and I like to stay sober and aware because you never know when or what could pop off. Hopefully that's not the case. I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm not trying to scare you or nothing like that. I want you to enjoy yourself. But definitely, keep it safe, keep it PC. I heard the Philly fans actually last year weren't really that bad. I think most people had a really good experience that I know that went to the game, and I know quite a few. But NFC Championship, I think tensions rise and things can get interesting. So, definitely stay safe, man. That's the biggest thing.
And enjoy it. It's going to be an amazing game. It's going to be an amazing game.
And this is, Suneil, I've been saying it all week. I mean, we're 2 days in, but I've been saying it since the matchup happened. To me, this is an instant classic. I really feel like this is going to be one of those games that you see on NFL films years later, and you're like, yeah, I remember this game. I remember the thoughts going into it, the emotion, everything. I really think that this is going to be an instant classic and a throwback for many years to come that we're going to see. And hopefully the 49ers are on the winning end, because when those NFL classics come on and the 49ers aren't on the winning end,
brutal.
It's hard to sit through those again. And I usually don't watch them. So I would prefer to watch this classic with a smile on my face as I look back on it many years from now. So shout out to Kevin real quick.
I'm trying to be, a little humble in 2023, but I got to say, in the offseason, I was telling you what are the two teams in the NFC that were going to be the best two teams. And what teams did I always mention, Jesse?
No, you're right. Philly and San Francisco. You're right.
So this game I knew was going to happen. It's come to fruition. But also, I have no idea how this game is going to go because these are the two best teams, I think, in the league. And I'm still rocking with it. The team that wins this NFC championship game is winning the Super Bowl, Jesse.
Yeah, I'll say this. I looked at you a little side-eyed when you said that before the playoffs started. It's starting to feel that way because the AFC is a little bit beat up all of a sudden. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that plays out. It's almost like whoever comes out of that is just a shell of themselves. 49er Faithful is from the PA, and he says, listen, I was there last year. Nobody messed with the Niner fans. And I agree. That's the same exact thing that I heard, Dave. Like I said, though, NFC Championship, that can change some things. So hopefully it's all good. Eric becomes a member. Appreciate you, Eric. And last, before we get going, Kevin says, not only am I a member, but I donated $10 as well. In anticipation of the game, I've been watching Eagles games. What gives me hope is Dallas, Philadelphia from week 6. Cowboys almost won with the rush. The 49ers would have won. Yeah, and I've been trying to pour through the games as well. It's tough because I don't want to put a lot of stock in regular season games. We're so far into the playoffs at this point that those games, I mean, ultimately don't matter. But you got to look at matchup stylistically, and that's one that'll give you hope. I would say the Tennessee Titans game is one that doesn't give me hope. Tennessee is the only team in the NFL that actually allowed less rushing yards than the 49ers. They were able to shut down completely Jalen Hurts as far as running and shut down the run game in general. I think they had like 60-something rushing yards, but Jalen Hurts threw for like 330 and 3 touchdowns. So, there's that side of it. But I think you can do that on both sides. 49ers, Eagles, there's definitely some interesting things in there. Adam Paul, Jesse, confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, last week I was at an 8, or 80% is the way that I put it. This week I'm at a 5. I'm not going to lie. I'm at a 5. I think this is a coin toss. This is a great matchup. I could see it going either way. Suneil, what are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty consistent. I think the Eagles are the toughest test for the 49ers out of any team in the league because they're the most complete. Along with the 49ers, I think they have the most ways to win. So I'm right there with you, man. It's by no stretch of the imagination where this is the first game where I feel like the 49ers could lose. I haven't felt that way in quite some time.
Okay, so you're at about a 5 as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm probably right there as well.
Yeah.
I'm at like a 4 or a 5.
Yeah, I got it. That's good. Well played there. Well played. Toby says, if we need pressure up the middle, Kinlaw and Armstead don't get a lot of pressure up the middle. We will miss DJ Jones in this game, just my opinion. Yeah, I mean, DJ Jones was a really good player. I miss DJ Jones in general. I think that he brought a lot of good to this team. I think he was a good guy, a good player, all those things. Armstead can create pressure. He definitely can create pressure. He can take over games a little bit himself. Kinlaw, I don't think he flashed last game, but also he didn't flash in the run game, which is a good thing. So, we'll see. We'll see how this one plays out. But I definitely do miss DJ Jones anyways, just because hell of a player.
I'm sure DJ Jones misses us too.
Yeah, I'm sure, but
with no coach.
Well, he's also probably like wiping his butt with money right now. I was like, do I really miss him that much? I don't know.
Get your bag, young king. Get your bag.
Speaking of defensive line and impacts, Omenihu found himself in some trouble last night, early morning hours, what have you. Alleged domestic abuse. I say alleged because I don't know the details, and I'm not quite sure what happened here, other than what's been reported. But I don't want to talk about this from a standpoint of, is he a piece of crap and should we hate him? Because we don't know the situation. However, I think either way, there's a good chance he doesn't play on Sunday. Now, I know that he's out on bail, but the 49ers are an organization that has held pretty steadfast that they don't want good people, not just good players. I don't know how they feel about this situation. I don't know if they plan to play him or what the situation is, but let's operate under the assumption they don't plan on playing him. How big of an impact do you think that would have on this game in particular?
And just to put it out there, I saw a report that's saying that more than likely he is going to play. So, and that was coming from some kind of 49er reporter. I'm forgetting the name, but just so obviously, like you said, it's alleged. We don't know what happens, but terrible timing, terrible headline. And I just hope that everybody in that situation is safe and cooler heads could prevail and let the justice system work itself out. As far as what it means for on the football field, assuming that he doesn't play, um, you know, the impact on as a football player, Omenihu's been having the best season of his career. He obviously has been a big. I think he's had a very positive influence as far as what he's been able to do on the field. And I think it would be a loss, right? But, the 49ers do have somebody in the stable that hasn't been playing in Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson obviously is a very athletic player, a fast defensive lineman. Could he be somebody that actually is perfect for the game plan for where the 49ers need? Because his athleticism can maybe make up for some of the athleticism of that quarterback over there. So it kind of might be a blessing in disguise because you do want to get Drake Jackson on the field for this specific matchup. And he probably wouldn't have without, this coming out there because, who else would they sit, right? So could be a blessing in disguise as far as Drake Jackson getting on the field because his athleticism, I think, will play a big role or could play a big role in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like we've been wondering, why has he not been active? What's going on? And it's nice to know that you have a kid with that much talent that is there if needed, and he might be needed. The flip side, though, is Omenihu's been a very impactful player for this 49ers team. He was impactful in last year's playoffs. He's made his impact in this year's playoffs against Seattle. So I think it's definitely a down step potentially because we don't know exactly what we have in Drake Jackson yet. He's shown flashes. I think he'll ultimately be a good player, but he's still a rookie who now has zero playoff experience because he hasn't suited up yet. And Omenihu is a little bit more of a veteran and shown he can make an impact opposite of Bosa. So I think that this one could hurt a little bit, but like you said, let's look at the bright side. Very athletic. Definitely, if anybody can track down one Hurts on that side of the ball, it could be him. I mean, the guy's a freak athlete. He does backflips, the whole 9 yards. So I think it could help in that perspective for sure. We'll see. I think it'll have an impact, assuming he doesn't play. And again, we don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. Maybe somebody's heard something more concrete. But as of now, my understanding, we just don't know. He should be available to play. We'll see what the 49ers decide to do here. And yeah, go ahead.
Keep your eye on one player, my guy, that I've been calling out, Jordan Willis, right? Because where Drake Jackson plays more on the outside, Omenihu has been switching inside and outside. Mm-hmm. Jordan Willis does that same type of thing. So my guess would be you're getting more snaps from Jordan Willis, who has shown with the opportunity actually played very, very well for the 49ers, not only last season, but also in spot duty this season as well. So I just think it's going to be, next man up mentality. Luckily, the 49ers have been doing that all season with guys like Armstead out for a large majority, Kinlaw out large majority, and they were able to, put together that win streak even with those guys out. So they're going up against a very tough offense. Yeah, I like Willis a lot. They're going up against the best offensive line that they've played. So it's going to be tough no matter who's lining up over there. So,
I agree. I was going to say I like Willis, but every time he plays, I yell at the TV. I'm like, get that ugly number 75 off my defensive line right now. That is such an ugly number for the defensive line. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
But he's productive. He's productive though.
He's good. No, he's a good player. And we'll forever be grateful for him and remember the way they beat the Green Bay Packers and know that was in large part because of him. But man, that 75, I can't. Fish and Chip says stats matter. Eagles have played a top 8 defense 4 times with a record of 1-3. I do agree. Stats do matter, but so does context. You got to remember 2 of those losses were not with Jalen Hurts, as they are 15-1 with Hurts, which means with Hurts, they are 1-1. So yes, stats matter. Context does as well. I would say that as 49er fans, we understand that so well because a lot of people want to bring up that Chiefs loss. they don't really understand the context behind that. You know,
Mm.
they don't want to hear that Christian McCaffrey, that was his first game. He'd only been there a few days, and Jimmy Garoppolo was still the quarterback, and the defense was banged up. They don't want to hear any of that. We know what the context is, but most people don't care to hear all that. Gray Fox says Philly thinks that they've already won the Super Bowl. The fall is going to be legendary. Yeah, you know, I do. I feel like Philly fans are very, very confident in this one. I don't watch national media, but based off of what people have been saying on Twitter, the national media is almost talking as if the 49ers have zero chance here. So I don't know. We'll see. The 49ers definitely have a chance. They definitely have a chance. So, you know, we'll we'll see. We'll see about that. All right, let's put a bow on the Cowboy game. Just any thoughts that you had as we went through this game. I know one thing surprised you. I would have to say the overall score of the game. You
Right.
picked that one to be a blowout, and
Definitely.
it didn't quite play out that way. But I think the 49ers were in control of that game. I mean, maybe you felt different, but I felt like they were in control of that game. I was never too worried. But overall,
Yeah.
just what were your thoughts on the Cowboys game?
That the first half Cowboys defense was much better than I expected. They ate up our offensive line in that first half. They were getting pushed around all over the place. It's a little bit worrisome that the offense looked very similar to a Jimmy G run offense in the playoffs, to be honest, right? Without the turnovers. I think, I don't want to say
Yeah, that's a
Brock
big.
Purdy obviously didn't give up turnovers, but it was a little bit disconcerting that momentum from the offense and being able to put up points and all that kind of stuff was not there. I think the running game was not very impactful in that first half. But this was a throwback, if there is a such thing as a Kyle Shanahan throwback 49ers game. I don't know if you have throwbacks when you've only been a coach for 6 years, but this is a throwback win in the sense that first half it was all about keeping it close, methodical, and he ran his offense like Novocaine. In the second half, all of a sudden, those 2-3 yard runs were turning into 5-6 yard runs. And they were able to put together one drive with some help from penalties from on the Dallas side to get the one touchdown that they needed. And obviously Robbie Gould being, the type of playoff kicker that he is, went 100% on his field goals. And that's all they needed with obviously a strong defensive performance. So a little bit different because we thought that, we were talking last week that this team was kind of changing to be more offensive led, and the defense was kind of showing a little bit of cracks, to be able to get scored on and all that kind of stuff. This was back to that old style where the defense kept this game to where it could be winnable and the offense did just enough to end up getting the victory. So now I don't know what to believe, Jesse. What is this team? You know what I mean? But we always mentioned, right? This team has multiple ways to win. That's why I'm very confident with this team, because they have more ways to win than 30 teams in this league. The one team that they don't have more ways to win against, that has an even amount of ways to win, is the team that they're playing this Sunday.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think, going into this game, I think I'd said it was going to be 27-20. It was obviously lower scoring than that, but it did stick within the 7. I just thought Dallas was the most complete team the 49ers had played, and I thought that would show itself during this game. I think it did to a certain extent, but like I said, I really do feel like the 49ers were in control of this game. At no point did my heart rate get up. I never had the moment where I either had to like stand up and get out of my seat, or I was like, let me sit on the floor because the chair just doesn't do in this scenario. Those are situations where it gets real tight, and I didn't feel that. I was very relaxed, and, the 49ers did their thing for sure. But Dallas was a good litmus test. They were a good litmus test because, again, it's an NFC East foe. I think they are similar to Philadelphia as far as being complete, although a step back. And so, now the 49ers are on the road, and this is where things get interesting. I want to talk about this comment here. Joseph says the Eagles had an easier schedule than us. I'm not worried about it. Show me that, because
they do
PFF and
by stand. They had the 32nd easiest schedule. The 49ers had the 31st.
So
by like percentages and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
and that may be the case. I'd have to see where that is. I know PFF has it. The 49ers had the 32nd ranked schedule. And the other web, I can't remember the other website that I pulled it from, but they had the 49ers at 32nd as well. So I could be wrong, but either way, I mean, 32nd, 31st, it's, you know what I mean?
Right.
They both were right there as far
points,
as strength of schedule goes. So, you know, and again, 15-1 with Hurts. The 49ers with CMC are 12-0, 12-1 technically, but really 12-0. We, again, context matters. This is Clash of the Titans style stuff right here. Jorge says, greetings from the 305, San Francisco 24, Philly 20. You heard it here first. I like that. That's a good score prediction. I haven't even thought about my score prediction. I'm gonna come up with it as we go through this show and kind of get my feelings out, because I really don't know who I'm gonna pick in this game.
Yeah,
it's a good one. Well, let's talk about it a little bit. As we put a bow on the last game, we did see some of the offensive struggles that happened out of nowhere. You talked about it. It almost seemed like a Jimmy G offense minus the turnovers. Not a lot of scoring happening. Do you think the offense is an issue right now, or do you think that was a one-off? Like, what are your thoughts overall about this offense?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because you would think it's a one-off, because clearly Brock Purdy has had this team scoring a lot of points, and it's not like a small sample size, right? Unfortunately, it is a small sample size when you come to the elite type defenses. And that's because they haven't played that many elite type defenses. They've actually played some of the worst defenses, and that's why they're putting up the type of points that they're putting up, right? Yeah. So that's where it's like, okay, well, there's a large enough sample size where you're thinking maybe it is a one-off. But I personally, and I think the stats show it too, Eagles defense is better than Dallas's defense. So
passing defense, especially.
Yeah. So for me, that means that it might be closer to what they're seeing against what we saw. The offense is going to be closer to what we saw last week versus what we've seen those previous weeks. So is it an issue? Here's where it is an issue: is the offensive line for the first time looked like it was an issue. And I'm talking about all season. And I hadn't seen that. I've been one of the biggest proponents to like offensive line is fine. But, you know, there was moments until that second half where it just didn't look good. I mean, that Micah Parsons just one hand shoving McGlinchey to the ground, that was horrible. You know, it seemed like the defensive line of the Dallas was always in the backfield. Purdy got sacked early, you know, in that first half. But they did tighten it up in the second half, and you know that'd probably be similar, because I do think that the defensive line of the Eagles is better than Dallas's. So, yeah, to answer the question, I do think that it can be a problem if they can't get that offensive line together, because if the 49ers can't run the ball, it's going to be a tough day. And I think that the 49ers just need to get back to having 4 yards per carry plus, and we haven't seen that in a couple weeks, to be honest. So yeah, I think that it could be an issue.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny because is it an issue? I don't know, but I think it just maybe came back down to earth. I mean, one thing we have to understand is these other teams get paid too, and I didn't look at that game and be like, oh man, you know, Brock Purdy really screwed this up, man. It was Brock Purdy's fault, or the play calling was terrible. I know a lot of people were mad about play calling. I actually wasn't. I didn't think the play calling was terrible. I didn't think Brock played terrible. I just think sometimes you play good defenses that can stop you and have really good players on the other side, and that's what happened. And I don't think that means the offense is necessarily an issue. It just means that this is kind of what we're going to expect going down the stretch, at least through the NFC in this final game here. You know, I could see a scenario where it's a close, low-scoring game again. I also could see a scenario where Philly gets in these shootouts from time to time, and maybe that's a possibility. I see a lot of people talking about Tampa had a good defense. First of all, Tampa is in the bottom 3, I think, in touchdown passes given up. So, when we're talking about, at least from Purdy's standpoint, he hasn't faced a passing defense. Philly's the best passing defense in the NFL, period.
And Tampa, we got to be honest about what the Tampa defense has showed up against the 49ers. Vita got injured, early in that game, and I think they were missing
both starting safeties and a starting corner.
So it wasn't their actual defense that we played.
Yeah. So, and again, this isn't to say like, oh, they can't put up points against a good defense, because they might this week. Again, Eagles, like I said, they get in these shootouts. It's not like it would be that crazy. We've seen them have some points scored against them. I think a lot of people also talk about the run defense of the Eagles, and that's definitely their weakness. But what's interesting is, when you peel the onion back a little bit more, the 49ers run more than any team in the league, outside zone out of 21 personnel. The Eagles, believe it or not, out of all the things they do bad in run defense, that's the exact formation and running style they do the best against. 3.2 yards a carry. So that's interesting as well. The 49ers not going to have to completely change their style. I mean, they can do other things other than outside zone, but they do love 21 personnel. And that's the one personnel that the Eagles actually play well against. Flip side of that is, the 49ers already have the number 1 rush defense, but the best they do against is 11 personnel and power runs up the middle. And that's what the Eagles like to do. So we have ourselves a very, very interesting matchup here. And like I said, the offense, I don't know if it's an issue, because an issue to me is like, okay, I got to point the finger at the problem. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not pointing it at Brock. I'm not pointing it at Shanahan. I mean, maybe the offensive line, but defensive line is really good for Dallas too.
Well, it was noticeably that they got pushed around, and I hadn't seen that all season, right? So this offensive line hadn't been a weakness. It hasn't been obviously like the best offensive line in the league. We're going up against that next week, but the first half, and I'm just talking about the first half, it didn't look good. Brock Purdy didn't look comfortable back there. And, kudos to the team for, making adjustments and all that kind of stuff, because clearly they were a different team in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared says 49ers winning by a field goal, 31-28. I like it. A lot of close scores here. Daryl says, sup, Jesse? Sup, so real? Thoughts on Charles Omenihu getting arrested for domestic violence? That was actually what we opened the show with. I'll give you a quick overview here, since you did pay to ask the question. We didn't really want to get into, the overall arching issue, just because we don't have any details. It's all alleged at this point. But assuming he doesn't play, I mean, that's definitely a hit. I think we both agree on that. However, Suneil brought up a great point in saying that it could be a blessing in disguise, because Drake Jackson is extremely athletic. He would play this game. He would actually be suited up, and that might help against Hurts. And then, Willis is a guy who's more than held his own. He'll probably get some of those snaps from the defensive tackle spot on third down situations. So I think they'll be able to make up for it, but it's definitely a loss, Daryl. It definitely is. Splendiferous says, he yells, actually, I think we need to make them run from left to right, is what he says. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you look at Philadelphia, they want to get upfield. They don't do a lot of wide zone or any of that crazy stuff. We definitely want to push them left and right. I mean, anytime that you can get a team doing that, usually bodes well for you. And I agree with that. That's definitely something that I would like to see, because that means that the 49ers defensive line is winning in the run game for sure. So let me make sure I didn't miss anything. He said I didn't yell. It was all capital letters. I figured maybe not like an angry yell, but I think you were definitely yelling. All right. As we talk about Philadelphia, and we really, I feel like we're giving them their flowers for sure. And, it's funny because I think as a fan, you want to like point out all the bad things about the opponent. And, they're trash because of this, and they lost to Washington in this week, and look at what happened when they played the Colts. And Eagles fans do the same. They're like, yeah, but you guys lost to the Bears and the Broncos and Atlanta, and look at what happened when you played an offense that can throw the ball downfield in Kansas City. You guys got blown out. Like, these are the things that other fan bases do. I don't think we sit back enough, at least not publicly, and talk about some of our concerns with the game and a matchup and why it can be a tough matchup. And I think that's our job here is to bring that to you, try to bring some real context. We're also going to talk about reasons to be confident, because there are definitely those as well. But these are the two best teams in the NFC, and not just the two best teams right now, because they're both extremely good and on hot streaks. More so the 49ers, but with Jalen Hurts, again, 15-1. I mean, those Minshew losses hit a little bit different. They look just fine against Dallas. They're extremely healthy. The 49ers are healthy. The number 1, number 2 seeds. There's reasons to be concerned and there's reasons to be confident. Let's talk about some of those concerns. Against the Eagles, when you look at this matchup, what is it to you that concerns you about these Eagles?
This is a team that has no weaknesses. Like, when you look at what the game plan is going to be, just from a very superficial level, there's not too many ways where you're just like, we could dominate on this in this level. Like you mentioned it, even in the running game, right, where they are weaker as far as a rushing defense, their strength on rushing defense is what we like to do as well, right? They have, just like we have talent at every single position and all pros and all that kind of stuff, they're very similar, where they have very, very talented, if not all pro level, Pro Bowl level players on every group that they have, maybe minus the linebackers, but they have probably the best cornerback duo in the league. Their safeties are extremely disruptive. Their defensive line is really good. Their offensive line is great. They might have the best receiving core in the league. They have really good running backs, and they have probably the best weapon as a quarterback when you look at his ability to throw the ball and run the ball, right? So I didn't mention very many things that they're not good at. And so yeah. that's like what the concern is when you look at how teams look at the 49ers, that's exactly how you look at the Eagles as well. And, they didn't have, with this starting lineup, that dip that the 49ers had at the beginning of the season, right? So they've been able to not only be this complete team, but they were from start to the finish to right now, where they're playing at a very high level with all of their starters and stuff like that. So they're a very, very good team, and I knew it. I put them in the top, off season, because I knew this roster was that good, very similar to the 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's a very good roster. I picked them to win the NFC East. I didn't think it'd be particularly close. And as the season went along, it was very obvious that once the 49ers beat Miami, that this was a clash that we were going to see. Like, that's just the way that I felt. And I think a lot of people felt that way as well. Cryptic says, do you think holding the Seahawks to 23 and the boys to 12 is a product of those teams being bad, or our defense made them look that way? I believe they can do it against the Eagles. Yeah, I would say that that's definitely a product of our defense. But I would challenge you a little bit and say, imagine now we got to go against the Seahawks offense with a better quarterback at the helm and the Dallas defense combined. And now we got to face that team. So we're going to take the best of the last two games, make the quarterback a little bit higher level, and say, now that's the team that we got to go face. And oh, by the way, we got to do it on the road. That's Philly. that's Philly,
And look, it's the teams that we've played, we've always been more talented than. Mm-hmm. So there were things like, even if we didn't play perfect in this arena, we were able to overcome it just because we were the better team, and that other team couldn't necessarily take advantage of maybe where we messed up. That isn't going to be the same for the Eagles. The window of like how much we could do wrong and not get exposed for it, this is the smallest window where we've gone up against all season. And that's where really the concern is the 49ers have to dot all their I's, cross all their T's. They have to play as close to perfect as they can, because if there are any of those struggles, we are going up against a team that could take advantage of any of those struggles. That's, I think, the biggest concern that I'm trying to bring up because of how complete they are.
Yeah, the margin of error is very, very small, and the biggest concern for me is certainly Jalen Hurts. I mean, one, he throws a very good deep ball, and one of the biggest concerns that we talked about going into the playoffs, and I think a lot of people would agree with, is, can the 49ers control the deep ball? Remember, we'd seen it against Arizona, we saw it against the Raiders. It's like, okay, now they got to go against DK and those guys again, and they've done a great job thus far. They really have. Although I will say, Dak had a very wide open Gallup that he couldn't take advantage of. He did take advantage of the one CD Lamb throw. DK got behind us there for a play, Charvarius Ward. So that's still kind of there. And the Eagles and Jalen Hurts ranked number 1 in deep ball passing this year. So you've got that while also having to deal with the running aspect of Jalen Hurts. And, when you look at the amount that he runs, I think 4 games he's had at least 15 rushing attempts. Only 1 game all season is he had less than 5 rushing attempts, and that was in a blowout win to where he didn't have to run at all. So we look at the quarterbacks that we just faced, they'll run anywhere from 3 to 7 times at a high. Well, 7 times is like low end of the spectrum for Hurts. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's like 12 games he ran 9 times or more. He runs a lot, and he's going to run a lot. That's not going to change this week. So now you've got to start to deal with a mobile quarterback who can also hurt you deep. I think, to me, that's the biggest concern. And then if there's a situation where the 49ers are playing from behind for once, all of a sudden that defensive line can pin their ears back. Listen, there's only 17 players in this league that have 11 sacks or more, Suneil. 4 of them are on the Philadelphia Eagles. One of them is number 2 in sacks behind one Nick Bosa with 17.5 himself and Hassan Reddick. And the guy that doesn't even come up when we talk about those stats might be their best defensive lineman, and that's Fletcher Cox with 8. This defensive line is incredible. And when you have guys like Ndamukong Suh and Robert Quinn who don't even start, man, this defensive line is phenomenal. And then to make it tougher, not only are they going to pressure you and hit your quarterback, but they're not going to let receivers get away from them. They have Big Play Slay on one side. They have Bradbury on the other, who I think just made an all-pro team. You got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the back end. They have an elite secondary and an elite pass rush. You combine those two, and if you're behind and you got to go win this game, man, that doesn't bode very well for the 49ers. So those, to me, are the biggest concerns when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles. And like you said, very, very complete team. I took the Philadelphia Eagles roster. I took the 49ers roster, figure out how many starters we would have on offense and defense. I came away with 11 Eagles starters and 11 49ers starters. That's how good this team is. They are right there as far as overall talent with the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, they are right there. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible roster to look at as well.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and you mentioned it, right? With the defensive, like, this is a game where the 49ers can't let the score get too far away from them, because I think the defense that's able to make the offense, or the team overall that's able to make the offense one-dimensional, that's the team that ends up winning this. Because, I know we're bigging up the Eagles because of the segment that it is, but these are the same things that I'm sure Eagles content creators, if they're being honest, are saying about the 49ers as well, right? So they're mentioning our talent. They're mentioning, hey, we can't come from behind on this team. This is going to be a very, very tough game. So that's kind of what we're mentioning. It's not like the 49ers can't beat this team. It's just they can't make any mistakes. They have to be able to be effective and efficient throughout this game to be able to compete, because this is a game that it could get away from either team if those teams make mistakes.
Yeah, and again, you talked about the 49ers and being able to win in a myriad of different ways. I mean, again, I could see a scenario where this is much like the Dallas game where nobody can score. And then I can see a scenario where they both are scoring at will. Like I could see either one of those and look back on it and be like, yeah, I guess in hindsight, I should have seen that coming. And so in both of these teams can do it. Both of these teams can put up points. Both of these teams can stop teams from putting up points. It's a really interesting game, a really interesting matchup. Josh says Purdy ain't that good. Dallas shut down his spin moves, and he had to be Jimmy G for the rest of the game. Everyone needs to be perfect against the Eagles, or we're going to lose. Wish we had Lance for this game. Well, listen, I'll work backwards through this. Yes, I wish we had Lance too, but that's not the situation that we are in. And I have a lot of confidence in Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy to me, I thought this was a great question by Jack. I just came off of a show with him, and he said, "Is Brock Purdy ready to make history?" And I took that question as, is he mentally ready? Like what does it mean to be ready? I think we look at it from the mental standpoint, and we say, okay, can he handle the situation? This is a road game with a raucous crowd, chance to go to the Super Bowl on the line. Like you said, the margin of error is very little. Can he be ready for that type of task mentally? I think it's yes. I mean, Brock Purdy, say what you want about Brock Purdy, but one thing that you cannot say, at least not yet, and I this is the one thing that I liked about him a ton coming out of Iowa State. I think he's bulletproof mentally, and I think that can carry you a long way. And I think that's a big reason why we are here with Brock Purdy. The physical limitations are there. There's no doubt about it. And we'll see if those ultimately hinder him in his career. Obviously they took away some of the biggest weapons from the 49ers and the offense didn't look the same. I get all of those things. But I want a quarterback that's confident in these situations. And I think Brock Purdy is just that. I think he fits that bill. So I don't think he's going to be shaken. I would be shocked if we come into Sunday at the post game and Brock Purdy is the sole reason why the 49ers lose this game. I don't see that happening. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out. I have a hard time believing that would be the case. You have any thoughts on that, Suneil?
Yeah, I mean, I wish we had Lance for this game. I'm a big proponent for Lance, but we don't know what this offense looks like. We haven't seen Lance enough to know that, to have that kind of confidence. We're just going off of projections. I'm extremely confident that I don't think that if we lose this game, Lance was going to be the difference of whether or not we lost. I don't think it's going to be because of quarterback play that Lance could bring something that Brock couldn't bring that ended up being the reason why we lost this game if we lose. I think that Brock Purdy gives us the elevated quarterback play that we need to be competitive against any team. Not just because of his mental aptitude that you're talking about, where he has those intangibles, things you can't, necessarily put on a stat sheet, but he's not somebody that has this, you talk about Josh Allen and, about him. And I was always kind of, I don't know if you remember, like, I wasn't as high on the Buffalo Bills as you were. I always thought that they were beatable. And the reason for that is Josh Allen always tries to win the game with every single play. And that's why he's one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks as well, is because instead of doing what's smart, because he has so much ability and so much talent, he overuses that and doesn't necessarily play smart. Brock Purdy's always making the smart play. And to me, when you have the amount of talent that the 49ers have compiled on both sides of the ball, you want your quarterback to be smarter than necessarily just have all of this talent. And I think Brock Purdy plays smart. He has made, he's obviously been a little bit lucky when it comes to some of his throws that have been dropped interceptions and things like that. But even when he has thrown interceptions, it's never decreased his level of play. When he's made a mistake, he's not coming back and making mistake on mistake on mistake.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so to me, any quarterback's going to make mistakes. I think that Brock Purdy gives us a chance to win. And if we can't win with Brock Purdy, I don't necessarily think that we would have won with Jimmy or even Lance at this point, because I haven't seen Lance necessarily do anything that makes me think that their level of play is going to be the reason why we win or lose this game.
Yeah, and I would agree with that last statement. I mean, we don't know the answer to that. I think where Josh is going, I don't agree with the first half of Josh's statement. I agree with the final part because I do. I think Lance, if he had a full season, would have been great in this situation. I
Mhm.
do, but I also think Purdy's going to be good in this situation too. So to your point, I just said that I don't think I would be shocked if we come in the post game and say, "Oh, Purdy's the reason that they lost this game." And so, if I don't think he's the reason that they would lose this game, then it would be hard for me to say that either of those other quarterbacks would be the reason that they would have won the game, if that makes sense. So, I'm fine. Like I'm fine with where we're at with Purdy for this year for sure. I think that he's mentally ready for this moment. I really, really believe that he's bulletproof there. He's bulletproof mentally. And right now, with this team, I mean that's enough. I think that can be
Mhm.
enough. So we'll see. Legendary says we haven't played up to the level we can play yet. In every game, we've always left meat on the bone. Sunday, we can maximize both sides of the ball. Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have left meat on the bone. I think we played down to Seattle maybe that first half of that first game. What's interesting is we're starting to kind of see old 49er stuff. Remember, Suneil, early in the season, we talked about, they were a one-half team. It was more they couldn't score in the second half, but now it's kind of flip-flopped where it's like
Mhm.
the second half they're starting to take off. I don't know if we can attribute that to the game plan where they're going very pass heavy in the first halves of these games. And then in the second half, they're establishing the run, and then that's what's making the offense go. Or if it's just happenstance. But I'm interested to see the game plan from Kyle Shanahan in this one because those first two games, the offense in the first half hasn't looked spectacular, and they haven't ran the ball a lot. And the Eagles, again, great defense, but if they do have a weakness, it is that run defense. Do the 49ers look to take advantage of that early and often? How do they attack this situation? I'm not quite sure, but I will say that that's an interesting thought there, and I don't know what the answer to it is. We're going to find out on Sunday.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean that what that last statement was saying, I do think that this is a game where if the 49ers, a bad half could put this game out of reach, right? So the 49ers do need to make sure that they're playing a full 4 quarters. And that's what
Mhm.
I've always mentioned is the 49ers haven't been able to put together a full 4 quarters. And they've been able to get away with it because usually they're just that much better than the teams that they're playing. But that's where we go back to margin of error. This could be a game where, 1 quarter could be the difference, right? So they have to be able to just make sure all their I's are dotted, all their T's are crossed, and really keep it close to where the game is always in contention. And I do believe that they're going to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Jorge says, gents, I understand the anxiety about facing our toughest opponent yet, but the Eagles ain't seen the likes of us. Go Niners, make Sirianni cry. Yeah, I'll say this. Sirianni's super annoying. Super annoying. And I feel like their fan base is really taken on the persona of Sirianni. I would love nothing more. And we're going to talk again. Like I said, I know this seems like, oh God, they're very doom and gloom and they seem like there's no shot. We're trying to give you both sides here. We're going to give you the 49ers side here in a minute. And trust me, there's plenty to talk about over there as well. I think when you are going into a fight, you want to know the most you can about your opponent so you know how to exploit them. So we got to know. We got to know where the Eagles are good. We have to give them a healthy respect. We got to know that if we don't keep our face covered, that we can be knocked out too. Anybody can be knocked out, and the Eagles can definitely deliver the knockout blow. However, if we are prepared for everything that they bring, then we can counter that. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Miguel says, definitely keep Hurts in the pocket and bring pressure and force him to go through his reads and offensive, run the ball to the outside stretch and stretch the field side to side. Yeah, that one's interesting. The offensive side of things is a little bit interesting because, like I said, outside zone is the only the only thing that the Eagles do defend well in the run game. It seems like so. I don't know if that one will work so much, but as far as keeping Hurts in the pocket, yeah, it's a big key to this game. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Is interesting if you really dig deep and look at the stats. I don't know if it's so much focusing on Hurts as much as shutting down the others. Because there's a stat that I was looking at, and the 49ers, the Eagles with Hurts have only obviously lost one game, but struggled in maybe like 3.
Mm-hmm.
And in all 3 of those, guess who their leading rusher was?
Hurts.
And that's kind of where I was like, huh. So it's so much about like focusing in on Hurts and don't let him beat you with the legs. It's just don't let everything be on. Don't let Hurts beat you with his legs and let Miles Sanders beat you with his legs as well, or Gainwell, or whatever it is. It's more if you shut down where Hurts is the only weapon that they have, the 49ers are doing a really, really good job, because much like our team, they have a lot of weapons. It's really shutting down the others where everything is on Hurts' shoulders. I actually want that to be the game plan, where it's like Hurts has to beat you, but not everybody else is going to beat you, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I'll play a little devil's advocate. I think from a running aspect that could be true. I'm curious, and this is what stats aren't going to tell us unless we get really, really deep in all those games. I wonder how many of those games where his mobility was the difference for him to be able to throw downfield, though. You know what I mean? Like, was there times, because like I said, you look at Tennessee, they only rushed for like 60-something yards. And I mean, he didn't run well. Sanders only had like 13 carries for 26 yards. I mean, he didn't run well. But then he, threw for 380 and 3 touchdowns. So it's like, how much of that was his mobility to open up the passing game, and that's why maybe they won, some of those games are big plays. I'm trying to think.
I'm just saying those games were close, and they were against teams that aren't as good as the 49ers.
For sure.
So what I'm saying is that, like, that's maybe something we can exploit that we don't necessarily. I mean, obviously, I think that we have a better chance where everything is on Jalen Hurts versus Jalen Hurts knows his running game is working well. And then he could do the play action, which he's really good off of, kind of thing. So the 49ers is really just like, like sometimes in basketball, when there's a really great player, it's like, let him go off, but nobody else is going off. Right. And that's, I think, kind of what I'm talking about is like, let Jalen Hurts get his rushing yards. Let Jalen Hurts, get, maybe even, his passing yards off, but maybe not the big plays. AJ Brown doesn't get a whole bunch of touchdowns. Devontae doesn't get a whole bunch of touchdowns. Sanders isn't, has one of those 30-yard rushing games. I think the 49ers are in a good position if it's just Hurts running for his life, trying to keep this offense going is what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. David says, such an even matchup. If the Eagles play their best, we can't beat them. But if we play our best, they can't beat us. It might come down to an injury. Yeah, I mean, it could come down to that. If both teams play their best, man, I don't know. I think the 49ers can beat them, but I also think they can beat us. Like if they both happen to be at their best, I don't know, man. That's where it gets interesting, because again, these teams are so evenly matched, I saw a really good. I wanted to see this. Fish and Chip says context. I like this. Good. I like you're bringing context. Of the 70 sacks, a third of them came in 3 games. Sure. That's a lot. 23 sacks came in 3 games. Holy Nikes. I did not realize that. That's actually really, really good. That's a good stat. That's a good context stat. So if we pulled those 23 out, that puts them at 47 sacks for the other remaining games. I mean, I think the 49ers had 44 total sacks, so it's still a high number, but man, that's a lot. That I'd have to look at that one, but if that's true, that is some really, really good context, actually. I like that. That's great context. All right. Enough talking about the Eagles and what they do well.
Right.
We know now. Let's talk about reasons to be confident, because I think there are plenty of reasons for the 49ers to be confident and plenty of things that the 49ers do well. What are some reasons that you are confident in this matchup?
everything we just mentioned about the Eagles, the 49ers do just as well and sometimes even better. So, like I said, I always go with the team that could win in more ways than the other team. And 49ers have multiple ways. You could win with the running game, you could run with the passing game, you could win with the defense. You could win even with special teams, right? We saw Robbie Gould being able to, really be the separation between the in the last game. So for me, I just think that we have maybe even better talent at all of the places that I mentioned, right? I would say our rushing attack is better than the Eagles' rushing attack. I would say that our receivers are better after the catch than the receivers that the Eagles have. I think the Eagles have better big play receivers as far as the deep ball and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say that, if I'll take Debo and Ayuk with the short pass and, breaking it free. So the secondary has to be able to tackle. They're gonna have to deal with the most physical team that they've played as well. I think we have an edge at tight end. I think that Nick Bosa is ready for a breakout game, and he can, there's some weaknesses, even though that offensive line is really good. I think that they will give Nick Bosa an opportunity to really, be a game changer this game. And look, I think we have the coaching edge. I think that right now Shanahan and D'Amico are better coaches than what the Eagles have. And in a game that I think is extremely close in talent, that coaching could be the difference. And I think Shanahan has been here. We just mentioned, like, he's been, NFC Championship game 3 out of the last 4 years. But I was mentioning, if you take him as a coordinator as well with Atlanta, he's been in the NFC Championship game 4 out of the last 7 years.
Yeah.
So obviously he hasn't won all of those, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl in that, but that's still experience that Sirianni doesn't have. So if it comes down to crunch time, I would trust that this coaching staff has learned from their mistakes and can lean on that experience, where Sirianni's getting his first experience really as a coach in this type of moment.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. That was my number one reason for confidence. Here's what's interesting about the Eagles. And the only answer I have is coaching and their defensive coordinator, whose name slips me at this moment. But when you have that many elite players on defense, I mean, and we're talking, they are all over the place on that defense. But your team frequently gets in these shootouts or can't stop the run or whatever. That tells me that you don't have the best coaching. Because if I gave D'Amico Ryans that defense, I guarantee you they wouldn't get ran on the way that the Philadelphia Eagles have. I would guarantee you they wouldn't get into the shootouts that Philadelphia has been in. If I gave them Dan Quinn, who we just saw do a phenomenal job last week, they wouldn't be in those situations the way that they have been. So I put that on the defensive coordinator because the overall talent is there. The rest of it comes down to coaching. So why are you in those situations and why is it happening frequently? It's got to be on coaching. And then again, when you flip it to the other side and you talk about Sirianni, who I think's done a fantastic job. I mean, I don't have a bad thing to say about Sirianni. I think he's done great. But to your point, he hasn't been in these situations yet. Shanahan has. Shanahan has failed, and I think failure is actually a good thing in these situations. I think it drives you. It makes you push harder. It makes you remember maybe every stone that was left unturned in those previous situations and make sure that you don't leave those unturned this time around. So I think the 49ers have a huge edge when it comes to coaching. I think the 49ers have a huge edge when it comes to the linebacking core as well. And this is where, and not all teams can exploit a poor linebacking core the way that the Eagles have, but the 49ers can. The 49ers have great ways to exploit that. They have CMC, they have Kittle, they can work Jennings out of the slot. There's many ways. They can put Debo in the backfield, Mitchell. They have a lot of weapons. And in fact, arguably their biggest weapons are ones that exploit linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing, we talked about experience between Sirianni and we talked about it between him and Shanahan. How about this team having experience? How about this team has been in these situations? A lot of these players have been there. Fred's been in it twice. Trent Williams was in it last year. Kittle's been in it twice. Charvarius Ward has now been in it. This is his second time. He was actually on the other side when we lost in the Super Bowl. He was on that team. So there's a lot of players on this team, you know, from your Greenlaws to your Wards, McGlinchey,
Even the
Juszczyk,
rookies.
Debo, Kittle, I mean, so many on this team that have been in this scenario just a year ago. So that is an advantage as well. And these things matter, especially when you have to go on the road. Now, the Eagles have the advantage of being at home. I understand those things, but out of these two teams, if I were to trust one team more than the other to have the mental side figured out and be able to go on the road and win, I'm picking the 49ers. I think the 49ers are the team that can go on the road and win. As good as Philadelphia is, if this game was in Santa Clara, I'd be probably an 8 out of 10 in confidence. 8 out of 10 in confidence that the 49ers would win that game. I just don't think mentally they can be as prepared as the 49ers, who have been in this situation many, many times over the last few years, from their coaching staff to their players. Like I said, I think those things are the reasons to be confident with the San Francisco 49ers. And then finally, run defense. I mean, run defense has been elite all year long. And you talked about it. The Eagles don't run the ball as well when you shut down everybody else. Well, I don't know how good of a job they're going to do on Hurts, because mobile quarterbacks do tend to hurt the 49ers. But I will say this. I don't expect anybody else to be able to do much of anything. And if that is enough to slow down or stop Hurts from being mobile in the run game, then the 49ers also have a very good chance, because there is not a single running back that puts up 100 yards on this defense. It just doesn't happen. Teams can do it from time to time. I think Eagles fans are probably looking at that Falcons game and being like, well, look at Mariota and what he was able to do. Well, we know that at times in that game, the 49ers were missing 8 defensive starters. That's context that matters. So I think there are a lot of reasons for the San Francisco 49ers to be confident. And a lot of them are the intangibles. But again, intangibles, those are things that you look at and you're like, yeah, you know what? We didn't talk about it. We talked about box scores. We talked about the statistics. We talked about the players. We didn't talk about the intangibles, and it was the intangibles that won this one. I could see a scenario like that for the San Francisco 49ers. So,
and you look at, you know, I guess a lot of guys in the chat have been mentioning it. This is the first team like this that the 49ers have played. It's also the first team like this that the Eagles have played. You look at kind of who they had to beat to get into this, right?
mm-hmm.
They beat teams that they were very, very familiar with, right? So it wasn't like necessarily stuff that they weren't prepared for. They've never felt the physicality that they're about to feel with the 49ers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So once again, going back to experience, who do we think can figure it out? Because that's basically what it's going to be, right? You have your game plan, everybody's going to go, and then they actually try to execute that game plan, and you realize all the talent and it blows up. We've seen the 49ers halftime after halftime after halftime make the type of adjustments that they need to make to win games, even if they didn't look good in the first half. To me, that's something that the 49er faithful can draw as far as confidence-wise on, is if it comes down to who's going to make the better adjustments. I think at this point, the 49ers have proven on the defensive side and the offensive side that no matter what the equation is, they've been able to solve it, right? And for most of the games that the Eagles have played, they haven't had too much pushback. They've always been kind of winning and blowing teams out and all that kind of stuff. That's not going to be the case for this game.
Yep.
All the inexperience that we're talking about with Purdy, as far as him being a rookie and all that kind of stuff, at this point, he's had probably similar amount, if not maybe a game or two less than Hurts in the playoffs. Like, so it's not like Hurts is that much more seasoned.
They both have 2 playoff games.
Yeah,
they
so
both have 2 playoff games.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking about it at this point. There's not much of an experience different at the quarterback, but when you look at the rest of the team, there's so much more experience as far as recently for this 49ers to play in meaningful games, NFC championship games, than the Eagles at this point.
Yep.
Not saying the Eagles don't have that, because they have guys that have won a Super Bowl that are on this team. But
for sure.
Overall, I would say the majority of the team for the 49ers has more playoff experience than this Eagles team as it's constructed right now.
Yeah, and that's just it. Is I'm sure there's players on the other side that have been there, but when you look at the team that was just there last year, a lot of those pieces are remaining. I mean, the core of this team is still the same.
Right.
There's definitely some pieces that have changed, but the core, those are the same guys. So not only have they been there recently, but they did it as a unit together. So they have confidence in that, to where this is Philly's first time. And I think both these teams are in situations where it's like, okay, we got to cash in. Like the 49ers are like, we've been here many times. It's time for us to cash in. The Eagles are looking at it and they're like, okay, we're getting ready to have to pay Hurts. It means we got to cash in because we're going to lose a lot of these players. I think both of these teams have that pressure. So I think it's even. I got to imagine that Philly fans are looking at Brock Purdy and saying, okay, our best chance to win this is to put this game on his right arm. I think that's fair. I think as 49er fans, though, to your point, we're kind of saying the same thing about Hurts. Yes, Hurts has put up some big numbers this season. I don't want to take that away from him, but those are not in do or die situations. They're just not. Where if you lose, you go home. That's it. Your season's over. I want to put this game on his right arm too. And so we both have that going for us. So it's not like it's not like we've got Mahomes on the other side with this Philadelphia team. We're like, oh, dude, I mean, if it comes down to like, Brock Purdy winning the game with a minute, no timeouts, or Patrick Mahomes, like, I ain't feeling good about that. Well, I'm feeling just fine about doing that with Hurts. So, they've got some of the same issues that we might have as far as that goes. So
sure. And if the Eagles are looking at the worst matchup for them, meaning like what team is constructed to beat us, it's the 49ers. Yep. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we just gave a lot of healthy respect to the Eagles. And I know some people in the chat were like, why don't they just wear Eagles jersey? It's not because of that. It's because this is a great team that we're playing. I do still think we're a great team. And I think we have the edge in a lot of places as well. So I think it's going to be a very exciting game that, I still think the 49ers take it.
Well, we'll get score predictions here in a second. Silverado Kev, what's up, Silverado Kev?
Up, buddy?
How you doing, man? He says,
props to Silverado. His channel has been growing quite well. So
yeah, good. real talk, Niner talk. Go check them out. They're cool, man. Really, really good people. They bring a whole different vibe. They got music going the whole time. It's a good time over there. So go check them out for sure. Silverado Kev says, let's not overthink this. Let's do what we do. Clog the running lanes, maintain the edge, and harass Hurts consistently and force mistakes. Get the run going on O and keep their O off the field. Line it up. Yeah, and I think that's a big key. I mean, we got to control the clock for sure. And like I said, I could see a scenario where the 49ers go a little bit up tempo time to time to make sure they can't cycle out that defensive line that is so deep and really a strength for the Eagles. Cryptic says, might not be much, but the players surrounding Purdy have been here and know what it takes. I give Hurts credit, but he's never been here. Yeah, I think we just talked about that, Cryptic, and you were probably typing that up as we were having the conversation, but I think now we definitely agree with you on that for sure. Brock Purdy's balls, that's weird. Philly, 9 sacks versus Washington, 7 sacks versus the Giants, 7 sacks versus New Orleans, 23 sacks. Yep, there you go. So a third of their sacks came in 3 games. If you remove those 3 games, you still have 47 sacks, which in a 14-game season is still a very high number. Right. But it definitely seems less daunting when you break it down like that. It's a great find by you and Fish and Chips there for sure. And then let's see, just make sure I didn't miss anything. Abu Marcos says, I feel uneasy when we think about the ways to make sure our quarterback doesn't lose it. And the other 3 teams left simply give their quarterbacks the keys and say, win it. like I said, I'm not putting Hurts in that category of Mahomes and Burrow. Like that's something that we'll talk about if we make it to the Super Bowl. You know, that's definitely not going to go in our favor, the quarterback position. I definitely give the edge to the Eagles here. I think Hurts has earned that. He was a damn near MVP candidate. But when it comes to the mental side and who's prepared for this situation, I don't think Brock's any less prepared than Hurts is at all. So to me, Abu Marco, you know, maybe the overall play, there might be a gap there. But as far as the mental ability and capacity, I think Purdy's right there with Hurts. That's my opinion.
And can I talk about that? We're not talking about it as far as Purdy is the weak link. We're just saying when you have the type of talent that the 49ers have, you want to get the ball into the talent's hands, right? So it's not because Brock Purdy can't win a game. It's just that's not the smartest way to play. Like, even if, you know, there was maybe a more well-known quarterback, I'm sure the game plan would still be get it into CMC's hands as much as possible, get it into Debo's hands, Ayuk's hands, Kittle's hands. It doesn't matter who the quarterback. Yeah, those are all pros. So it's like it's not that we're saying don't give the keys to Brock Purdy. It's just that's not the smartest game plan for any quarterback. Even if it's Tom Brady back there, you're still saying get the ball out quick to these guys and let them play.
Yeah, it's if the game's played 10 times, what are you most likely gonna have to do to win a majority of those games? Like, play it smart. It's just like saying the secondary of the 49ers is the weak link. It's like, well, I mean, I guess technically it is because the defensive line's so good and the linebackers are elite, but the secondary is not bad. They're just the quote unquote weak link in this defense, you know? So yeah, I agree with you. We're definitely not saying that. Jet Black says Eagles coach has been leaning on his players 100%. Yeah, especially the defensive coordinator. I'm sure that's what you're referring to. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. All right, let's just get into it. You know, we said a lot of really good things about the Eagles, deservedly so. Obviously, we talked up our 49ers. That's our team. Give me your score prediction for this game, Suneil.
Yeah, so obviously I went blowout last game and a lot of points and all that kind of stuff. I was clearly wrong. This is not a game where I think it's going to be high scoring by any stretch of the imagination. I think when teams are this evenly matched, it's going to be kind of like a defensive type game. Both of these defenses are going to flex their muscles, I think. And it's an NFC championship game. So it's going to come down to 3-point differential because it's an NFC championship game. That's what happens, right? So I'm going 24-21. 49ers get the dub.
24-21. Jeez, man. That's close. That's a good game. That's a damn good game for sure. That sounds like an instant classic to me. Man, I'm right there with you. I think this game, I've gone back and forth over the last 48 hours on what I want to do, and you know, I'm definitely not shy to pick against the 49ers on this channel. I've done it in the past, and if I feel like the 49ers are going to lose, I'm going to be real with you. This is not the Homer channel, and I've pissed people off with predicting them to lose in the past. But if that's how I feel, that's how I feel. I don't think they're going to lose this game. I think they're Super Bowl bound. You know, the Eagles are a hell of a team, and I don't want to take anything away from them. I think beating them will be a lot of fun with all the ish they've been talking. And I think it'll be great to celebrate getting that trophy on their field and the confetti falling and all those things. But I think the 49ers win this game. And I think it's close, just like you said. I'm right in that same range. I got it 27-24 San Francisco 49ers, and they are headed to a Super Bowl. And I think they're likely going to play the Bengals, which is a very favorable matchup in my opinion. So 49ers might be winning the Super Bowl here next couple weeks, but we are headed to the Super Bowl. You heard it from Suneil. You heard it from myself. And I will say this. We're going to hear a lot from the Eagles. You know what? Normally we have a Behind Enemy Lines show, and we have a really good guest on from the other team, the other content creators from those fan bases. we're pulling double duty on Thursday. We have 2 content creators. We're going to go in 45 minutes to an hour with one, and then another one is coming on right after that. We're going to do a full 2-hour show, essentially, 2 different content creators. So you're going to get a full perspective. This game is doubly important, which means we got to hear from the opponent twice just to make sure that we're getting our facts right. And these aren't small content creators. One of them's pushing 50,000 subs. The other one's pushing 20,000 subs. These guys are popular in the Philadelphia community, and they are going to bring it. So for sure going to do that on Thursday. Might do a call-in show tomorrow, although I'd have to do it before 49ers After Dark. So I'm trying to figure out the logistics of that. And as always, make sure that you subscribe to Suneil's channel. Link is in the description. Go show him some love. And until either tomorrow or Thursday, peace.